तन्मे मा प्रहसीः अनेनाधीतेनाहोरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारमवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः Om. May my speech be firmly established in my mind. May the mind too be firmly established in my speech. O self-effulgent Lord, be revealed in my consciousness. May the truths of the scriptures come to me. May not what I learn from them ever forsake me. Let me live my life, day and night, according to their teachings. I shall speak what is appropriate. I shall speak the truth. May that protect me. May that protect the teacher. Om. Peace, peace, peace. Let us feel our true inner self, which is beyond this physical frame, even beyond the thoughts, beyond anything that changes. The body changes. Let us feel that time when we were very little, say 1 year old. The body was different, looking different, height, weight, everything was different. The protection of mother and father was paramount. The attraction was towards just eating, drinking, sleeping, and just playing now and then and crying. I was there in that kind of body too. My dress was just a small frock. Time rolled on. Now I see myself in a different body. I am going to kindergarten. I am playing with my other friends. My interests have become different. My shape of body has become different. Very different from what I was 1 year old. Time rolled on further. I am in a different body, different dress as it were. Just as the time passed, the dress changed, So this dress of body also changed. I remained the same. My mind also changed. My interest became different. My ideas of joy and sorrow became different. A new attire, new dress, that also fell off as I grew older. A young person getting a job, getting money, all that became my interest. Finding a partner, having children, that became the source of joy and attraction. The time changed. I become a middle-aged person, worried, concerned about so many things. The body has changed, has lost a lot of strength and luster. The hair are turning grey. Another body, another mind, but I remain the same. Time rolls on further, an old person's body. Time rolls on further. The body needs to be changed completely. Death. But I remain the same. Never born, never dying, unaffected by time or space. I am the inner substance in everything. I am bliss itself. I have no wants. I am everything. I am the repository of all knowledge, all life. I am that. Om. Peace, peace, peace. So, dear friends, let us begin today's discussion on this great biography of Sri Ramakrishna, a spiritual biography as we have always been looking at it. Spiritual means there is, every person has body and also the spirit. The body keeps on changing, the spirit remains the same. So there is a physical body, there is the psychic body, and there is the self, the soul, the unchanging principle. So, in this biography, both the physical actions and the mental attitude with those physical actions, that the physical actions were expression of that mental attitude, they were described. And this is the biography and not of a common person. Common person lives a lot in body. Means the identification with body is tremendous. Not just attachment, but identification. And then there is again the identification with mind too. But then, who am I? The identification with our true self is very little. We therefore look for, search for, who really am I? So, this search is the prominent feature of humanity, that who am I? The animals are not known to have this question, but human beings are besieged with this query, who am I? So, this Sri Ramakrishna manifested as the teacher who is identified with the self and then puts on the attire of body, as it were. Like we all have our clothings, that it is now the clothings include the face mask also in these days. And so we have the difference there. This Charlie sitting in front of me has a black face mask. Behind that is Abhijit, and he has a different colored, the bluish colored mask. Your name I forgot. You had called. Colin. Colin has a kind of white colored mask. Naomi had another mask. Vrishali sitting has a different type of mask. So all these, this is not I. Although like any other body, the dress, and the dress is put on and thrown away, or when you don't need, you take it off, put it on the hanger. That it is, especially is seen very much as the winter sets in. You go out with a very heavy warm coat and a vest and so forth, 4 or 5 layers. I was told by when I came here 20 plus years back that Swami, when you are in this place, the winter is very harsh. So learn to put on many layers of clothing as when you go out. So you put on that. But then you can take it out. You never confuse that you are those clothings. But this body is also like that, actually just a clothing. So one need not get confused with that I am body. And it is the cause of all our confusion and the suffering that ensues from it, the bondage ensues from it, is that identification with body. I consider this body, this clothing, it is as bad, as considering the shirt as I. I am not that shirt. So this is the problem with us, and therefore the teacher, the God, appears as teacher. It is to teach humanity that look, I also am putting on the clothing, but I know that it is not me. You also have to learn to know it, and as you know it, all your bondages will get cut asunder. So that is the whole idea in this life of Sri Ramakrishna, and through various incidents this author Swami Saradananda, a very intimate close disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, has narrated the incidents to show how the attitude was behind these physical actions, and how the whole thing was to impart this teaching to everyone that you are actually divine. You are not bound by your clothings called body. Body is, let us remember this, that body is like clothing. And if we can separate ourselves, this is an art, this is actually the practice of religion, to learn to separate ourselves from body. And then just see how great freedom we feel. Even do it as a mental exercise, that when I am not body, I am not born and I am not going to die. It is the body that gets born and dies. I don't have any age. I don't have disease. I am not male or female. I am not bound by gender or age. So so many problems are just gone. I am not rich or poor. All these issues, they arise only by the identification with body. So Sri Ramakrishna is there to teach us this great idea that you are not body, and the bondages get cut asunder by that. That is why the hymn that we chanted says the description of Sri Ramakrishna, a breaker of all bondages, all worldly bondages, khandana bhava bandhana. That is what is Sri Ramakrishna. So we were seeing, this is page 635 onwards, that we are going to study today, read today, that it is Sri Ramakrishna would see everything with at these two levels. One is the level of changing, the body and all that changes, and then the unchanging reality, and then the mental condition. All these different things were clearly visible. The physical layer, the layer of the mind, and then the all-pervading reality, which is unchanging. Body and mind, they undergo constant changes. So, remembering this, we get then how Sri Ramakrishna could easily judge a person not just by physical appearance, but at a deeper level he could see what that person is actually embodying, what is going on in the mind of that person. It is a very well-known statement that he had made, and so many incidents are there to show this. One we shall see today, that he said that I could see the thoughts in people's minds as if, and it is like a thing kept in a glass case. So, in a glass case, well, being transparent, one can see easily what is kept inside. So also, what is going on in someone's mind, Sri Ramakrishna can see very clearly. So, that person also is not aware what is going on in his or her mind. And we think that, well, I know what's going on in my mind. No, friends. Let us face this fact that we know very little of what is going on in our minds. And so, therefore, did we chant the mantra today? Yeah. Yes, yes. Okay. Uh, okay, yeah. So, but yeah, I was thinking we have to chant the opening chant. So it is anyway. So we are going to read a few passages and we show that how Sri Ramakrishna could see everything as a whole, a complete. So, but let us begin with the opening chant. तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ते भूरिदा जनाः. The master, and I am reading now, saw a stone become conscious. He saw a man's tailbone elongate a little like an animal's tail and later shrunk to its natural length. He saw a male body function to some extent like a female body. And so many such things we read last time, that he could easily see these things. For him everything was pulsating with life. There is nothing inert. We had discussed these things before, that this difference between so-called living and non-living is an imaginary difference. Everything is living if we have the sensitivity to see the life in what normally gets called inert. There is nothing inert. So, so it was only after observing each thing and each person from the two standpoints, that is changing and unchanging, as mentioned before, that the master would come to a definite conclusion. He did not form any opinion based on observation made from the ordinary plane of consciousness as we do, because we don't have an access to what is going on in anybody's mind, and how in spite of this there is the same one self in all. So this is that we are not blessed with that knowledge that Sri Ramakrishna had the constant awareness of. So he would go to pilgrimages and see people from both these angles, that it is, and so his knowledge was complete. In that few classes earlier we saw that the author is telling that how Sri Ramakrishna's that observation even in the so-called ordinary physical things was so keen, very penetrating, and would bring out the exact essence, because he not only the physical appearance but what was going on inside, both were clearly visible to Sri Ramakrishna. So it is for detecting those subtle things. When he entered a holy place or temple, his mind would immediately rise to the higher plane of consciousness and reveal to him the divine presence in those places. It was when the master's mind had ascended to the higher plane of consciousness that he saw the golden Varanasi and realized how a Jiva, the embodied soul, becomes free from the bondage after dying there. He also experienced the tangible divine presence in Vrindavan, and he clearly perceived that Chaitanya's subtle manifestation exists in Navadvip even now. Because of his tremendous that observation power, he could see those things. It is like we have some people who has that subtle perception power. So what normally we cannot see, those people are able to see because of they are endowed with that, like they seeing the ghosts. So some people, they see it. I don't, but then there are some people who see that, and I used to discard that earlier. That is just imagination of these people. But then they actually see again and again. How can you can call that imagination? And there are some external verifications and connections with that. So they have some other sense. Like the example I gave, we all see yogurt with our regular eyes yogurt and eat it with glee. Why you don't like? Okay, yeah. So, okay, okay. So it is, but we don't see any worms in that. Now take a microscope and you will see all the worms crawling in that yogurt. Now suppose somebody's eyes have that power, then we'll be able to see what we are not able to see without a microscope. Not that the worms suddenly drop in when we put a microscope to our eye. They are there, but are not visible to our regular eye. So this is how Sri Ramakrishna observed so many different things that the others were not privy to. So then there is the description of Chaitanya, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had that divine experience. And then at Navadvip, so Sri Ramakrishna, when he went for the pilgrimage there, he did not feel anything, but then was thinking that since there is this Chaitanya, if there is, he had spiritual experience there, then something will be felt. And so it describes here, he ascended then to the higher plane of consciousness and experienced whatever Krishna's Leela had occurred there. In fact, Bhagwan Krishna enacted the same Leela long before in the same place. His disciples, Rup, Sanatan and others were the first to accept these revelations, and later all Indians believed that what the disciples told them. He could not have understood how Chaitanya discovered Vrindavan in that way, nor would we have entertained the possibility of such a thing. So, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that is what we presently know as Vrindavan, was the result of the revelation that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had. That he actually saw these things. People did not actually know which exactly place is that, but and therefore it was kind of lost. But Chaitanya, when he went there, because of his special that capabilities of communicating with the divine, he could see that this is where Krishna had his, all the play. He grew up here and so forth. So, uh, there is another incident told here near his birthplace. Hriday, his nephew, home was there in Shihar, not from Kamarpukur, where Sri Ramakrishna was born. We have already told the reader that the master sometimes spent time there when he visited Kamarpukur. Once during a visit to Shihar, Rajaram, Hriday's youngest brother, had a dispute with a villager concerning a business affair. The argument gradually developed into a physical assault, and Rajaram hit his opponent's head with a hubble bubble that was at hand. The wounded man filed a criminal lawsuit. The incident took place in front of the master. So the man called the master as a witness because he knew the master to be a truthful and holy man. So the master had to go to Vanavishnupur to give testimony. After the incident, the master severely scolded Rajaram for becoming blind with rage. When they arrived in Vanavishnupur, he told Rajaram, "Look, you somehow settled with the plaintiff by giving him some money, otherwise the case will go against you. I can by no means tell a lie." So that is how he was so truthful, he saw everything and was going to do that, although it is going against his own very close relation. Then that he saw in Vishnupur, there are some such visions that Master had. That Vishnupur was once a very prosperous place is evident by its large population and the existence of Lal Bandh, Krishna Bandh and other large lakes. Many beautiful temples, clean, wide, paved roads and big bazaar with shops. Many go for the study of these temples and then the anthropology associated with that. We have a scholar in Providence who had come here a few days back and told about his stay in Vishnupur. He learned Bengali language. He was from Hungary. Arkos his name. So he taught anthropology at Harvard and then that in Connecticut, what is that in Middletown, that university? Huh? Wesleyan, thank you. Yeah, Wesleyan. So he taught there. So he taught at all these places and now is retired. So he was speaking with me in Bengali, so that he learned it at Vishnupur and in Bengal in general. So Vishnupur, because of its famous terracotta temples, it is one of the pilgrimage place for devotees and for the student of art, architecture. It is because of its temple architecture and construction. So, and then they how people thought so he went there to study these things. So there is a constant flow of people in connection with business. In times of the past, the rulers of Vishnupur were extremely powerful, virtuous and fond of learning. Vishnupur was also once noted for its music school. Even now, many in the Bengal, the musical culture was prominently flourishing, what is called Vishnupur Gharana. So the school of Vishnupur. Shortly after Rupa, Sanatan and other companions of Chaitanya had passed away, the royal dynasty of Vishnupur converted to Vaishnavism. The image of Madan Mohan Krishna that is installed at Bagh Bazar in Calcutta previously belonged to this royal family. It is said that Gokul Chandra Mitra of Bagh Bazar once lent a huge amount of money to a ruler of Vishnupur. He was also charmed by the image of Madan Mohan that when the time for repayment came, he asked for that image instead of the money. In addition to the image of Madan Mohan, the rulers of Vishnupur also installed an image of a goddess named Mrinmayi. People said that the goddess Mrinmayi was a living presence. After the royal dynasty declined, a mad woman destroyed the image. Some family members reinstalled a new statue similar to the old one. After he had visited the temple in Vishnupur, the master was on his way to see the goddess Mridmayi. When he went to ecstasy and saw her face, when he entered the temple and saw the newly installed image, he noticed that it was not the same image he had seen in his ecstatic vision. He could not understand the reason for this. Later, upon inquiry, it was learned that the new image was not exactly like the old one. To display his skills, the sculptor of the new image had made the face look different. The broken head of the old image had been carefully preserved by a Brahmin who kept it in his house. Shortly afterwards, that devout Brahmin engaged a sculptor to make a new image using the old head. The Brahmin installed that image in a beautiful spot near the shore of the Lal Bandh and worshipped her daily there. Lal Bandh, as we saw, is a lake. It would be good to relate a few examples of the master's ability to detect the moods and intentions of people who visited him. We mentioned earlier that the master loved Swami Brahmananda. At that time his name was Rakhal. So, as if he were his own son. One day Brahmananda and the master were discussing various things standing on the northern side of the long veranda to the east of master's room. As they were talking, they observed a coach drawn by two horses enter the gate of the temple garden and come towards them. That is, the coach is that kind of two horses and very nice looking. Must be, the people must be rich who would come in that coach. It is like some people coming in a Lamborghini. So it is naturally, you see, must be rich people. So it is. So the master immediately knew that the coach belonged to a wealthy man who was famous in Calcutta. At that time, many people from Calcutta came to see Master, so he and Swami Brahmananda were not surprised by that visit. As soon as the Master saw that phaeton, however, he was horrified and hurriedly returned to his room. Swami Brahmananda was surprised by his reaction and followed him. The master told him, "Go to them. If they want to come here, tell them that they can't see me now." When Brahmananda returned to the veranda as instructed, the visitors approached him and asked,
Does not a sadhu, that is a holy man, live there? Swami Brahmananda said, Sri Ramakrishna, yes, he lives here. May I know the purpose of your visit? One of the visitors replied, one of our relatives is seriously ill and his disease is not abating at all. We have come here because the holy man may be kind enough to give us some medicine. Swami Brahmananda replied, you have been misinformed. He, Sri Ramakrishna, never gives medicine to anyone. Perhaps you have heard about Durgananda Brahmachari. He indeed gives medicine. He lives in a hut at the Panchavati. Please go there and you will see him. When the visitors left, Master told Swami Brahmananda, I saw such horrible tamas, that is, the completely unspiritual attitude, the attitude that prompts you to accumulate money and be inertiatic about anything else but so-called animal pleasures. Uh, so therefore Master did not want to see them at that time. So this is how he could see from the appearance, but what is inside that appearance. Like an expert will see a ring that is gilded, but is not gold. It is some baser metal given the polish and color of gold. Will look exactly like the real gold ring. But a common man will get cheated easily, and that happens. But an expert will know. The expert does not see only the outer shape, but also the inner material. So, like that, from outside a person looks one way, but what is inside is not seen by ordinary people. Only those who have such penetrative vision like Sri Ramakrishna, he could see everyone on both planes looks like this. But what is actually there at the mental level, at the psychological level, both would be seen clearly. So we get cheated because we go by what meets the eye. But what does not meet the eye is much more important. We get cheated like that story of that big shipwreck. What is that? You know, that Titanic. Thank you very much. Yeah. So the captain saw that this is an iceberg, but our boat's engines are powerful to wade through that. Doesn't look that big, because iceberg, only 1/10 is seen on the surface. 9/10 is hidden under the water, and so was not, they didn't think of it and just went ahead, and the unknown was much bigger than what was known. So in a human being also we see that what appears on the surface, on the body, normally we won't be able to see behind it. But a person who has developed that vision through meditation, through a deeper understanding of human behavior, they would see a person and would be able to see the inside, what is going on inside the mind of that person. Both can be seen by such personage. So this is how Sri Ramakrishna therefore could never get cheated by the appearance. We get cheated by the appearance. In our school, that there is an idiom in our language that says that in essence that the world is deceived because things are not as they appear. That is true, yes, the things are not as they appear and therefore the world gets cheated. Our high school teacher has added one more line to that. He would say that the things are not as they appear. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they are as they appear. Sometimes they are not as they appear. And sometimes they are. And therefore we get cheated. If it is always the case that they are not as they appear, we wouldn't get cheated because we know it appears like that, so it is not like that. But sometimes the things are as they appear, sometimes not, and therefore one gets cheated. So Sri Ramakrishna wouldn't go by appearance like a gold ring. Maybe it is actually made of gold or appearing like gold. You cannot say, oh, it looks like gold, so it cannot be gold. That would be a terrible mistake. But I have to see deeper and find out whether it is actually gold or just an appearance. So, Sri Ramakrishna could penetrate. And why he could? Because of his deep spiritual insight made him see that the different bodies, he could have that objective understanding of that. We are so much caught in the body that we lose the objective understanding that this similar body could contain different things. So, it is, we saw that the master regularly ascend to a higher plane of consciousness when he could see greater or lesser manifestation of spirituality in a particular place, thing or person. Whatever spirituality the master perceived did in fact exist in them. This would come out, very clearly. It is that Swami Vivekananda, the glorious example that is here, that it is when the author of this book, Swami Saradananda, had gone to Sri Ramakrishna, he told him, you must visit this young man, you must get acquainted with this young man, he has such wonderful spiritual qualities and so great he is. So this author decided that I will surely get acquainted with this man, he must be great. So he was waiting for that opportunity, but anyway, one day he went to meet another friend of him, and there he found some young man. And by the air of that young man and the way he was talking, Swami Saradananda came out with a very wrong impression that he is not at all a good example for anybody. He has no manners, he is very egotistic, doesn't know how to behave with people, is not taking cognizance of other people in room, very arrogant. That kind of impression he formed. This is the outer way that one would judge, the externals. And then when he has later learned that that fellow was Swami Vivekananda. He could not believe. At that time the name was Narendranath. So this is Narendranath. He could not believe that how superficial his understanding was, because outer thing is only what is accessible to us, that is just the label. We see, we buy something from the shop, and then we read the nutritional contents. Now, whatever is printed, we have access only to that. And we do not know whether actually, we don't have the way to test. We have to believe that what is printed there is right. So, that it has so much carbohydrate, so much fat, so much nutrient, and so forth. Yes, it is likely to be right, but we don't have access to it. So, it is sometimes, one devotee, she had a doubt. She bought something with a label, and then she thought that it is not it is not organic. It had the label of organic, but it is not probably organic. She had a doubt. So she wrote to that FDA or whatever that authority that certifies it, that is it like that? And after a long time she got a reply that we don't know because it is a product from China. So you have to ask China FDA, not to us. My goodness, because they didn't test it, so they are not able to certify anything. So Sri Ramakrishna had that perception very clear and would see what is going on inside. From his childhood, the large-hearted Swami Vivekananda would become a heart sick at the misery of others. Whenever he benefited by some action, he would encourage his relatives and friends to do the same thing. And when someone helped him in a particular matter, he would ask his benefactor to help others he knew. This was Swamiji's nature on matters of education, religion, everything else. We find evidence of this in Swamiji's actions when he was a youth. In college, he organized meetings and associations with his classmates to practice meditation and prayers at different places on a regular basis. When he became acquainted with Maharshi Devendranath Tagore and Keshav Chandra Sen, the leaders of the Brahma Samaj, he took some of his classmates to see them. After meeting the master and seeing the extraordinary purity, renunciation and love for God, he became a sort of religious vow for Swamiji to bring his intimate classmates to meet masters. A master means Sri Ramakrishna. Now see, because he got the benefit, he thought he can bring his other classmates to get the same benefit. The idea was good. The intention was good. But he didn't have the knowledge of what his friends were internally made of. Their constitution was not accessible to him. They were friends with him because of many other common these likings and habits and interests. Like some were friends with him because they both liked music. So now that doesn't mean that was the reason for their friendship. It is, but that doesn't mean that both have the same spiritual bent of mind. So, when Sri Ramakrishna would see his friends, that is what is described here, that it is, he thought he brought to Dakshineshwar only those whom he had known for a long time and considered to be good character and religiously inclined. That is the outer appearance. Religious inclination is appearing outside. It is a decoration, It is some kind of a makeup put on it. But the outer signs of being religious are not necessarily the inner religious temperament or constitution. That is very different something. For some social reasons, some people can put up a religious looking appearance. They go to religious places like churches or temples or synagogues or mosques regularly and put on the proper attire. They sit with proper, that's holy, these things. But actually they don't have that spiritual attitude. So, Swamiji thus introduced many of his friends to the Master, but the Master, with his divine insight, looked within them and sometimes arrived at a different assessment than Swamiji's, as we heard from time to time from both the Master and Vivekananda. So, Vivekananda narrates, after accepting me, the Master bestowed his grace by giving me spiritual instructions, but he did not do the same for my friends, and I insisted that he do so. Because I was young, I would sometimes argue with him on this point. I said, Sir, God is not partial. He does not bestow grace on one person and withhold it from another. Why will you not then accept them as you did me? Just as everyone can become a learned Pandit by willpower and self-effort, similarly all can definitely cultivate spirituality and attain to God. Very good. But is everybody at the same level to accept the same teachings? The outer symptoms of a malady would be similar to some other malady. Like many different problems can bring symptoms like, say, fever. If you have flu, you may get fever. If you have malaria, you may get fever. If you have corona, you may get fever. So only having fever doesn't actually tell you what disease you got. So the outer symptoms and inner disease, these two things are different. So the only treating the outer symptoms, you don't really need even to go to doctor. You read and then treat yourself. But that is not the case. One needs a proper diagnosis. And then what the diagnosis means, although the outer symptoms look like this, the inner disease is different. Come on, get tested if you have corona or not. And then you will see the outer signs were similar, but not exactly. The disease was not there, or was there, even though the symptoms were not very clear. So there may be symptoms or may not be symptoms. The disease may not be there or may be there. So one needs, what I mean is, one needs to penetrate behind the outer appearance. So Sri Ramakrishna had this tremendous skill because he could see everything at these three levels, the two changing levels, the physical and mental, and the unchanging spiritual. So, therefore, although Vivekananda would insist that you must give the same advice, no, your problem is one, their problem is different. Same medicine will not work for both. They need to do something else to get to that level. So, what I mean is that this is what is told here. The Master therefore reiterated, whatever you believe, whether you believe or not, the mother is showing me that mother is showing means the inner, that the divine mother is showing who they are from inside. And so just you don't know that, so you tell them, oh, you should tell me them the same thing. That will be destructive to them. So that is, this example is given. This topic will continue, that and we shall try to take it up on next Tuesday, and we shall for a few seconds meditate on what we read, and in case if you have question, feel free to ask. Any questions? Okay, give him that. Abhijit wants to ask a question.
Saintly people, they have this capacity to look beyond the exterior and see what's inside a mind.
Yes, yes.
So seems like there is a correlation between purity and this capacity.
Yes.
And so, is there a difference between what we call siddhi, that also comes through spiritual practice, and purity? Is there a correlation?
There is a correlation between that. It is a very nice question. That some get this capability because of some aspect of purity associated with it. Purity means, you dissociate from the capability to dissociate from appearance and see something inside. Now, this purity has levels. Some have the purity only up to this. They are not really saintly people, but they have acquired this skill through some level of purity. But that is, they are using it maybe for getting more fame, more money, more earthly enjoyments. So they are not saintly people. But saintly people, while they have this, they know where to use it, where not to use it. So they have control over this power, whereas those who have this power but are not pure in heart, they use this power in an indiscriminate way. The power uses them, let us say like that. They are under the grip of that power, and so they use it indiscriminately and actually themselves come to a ruin. So this is what happens. So purity is a necessary condition in both these. But how much purity? To what level? So therefore it becomes different for different levels of purity. He has another question. Oh.
Sometimes I see a tendency among devotees to see how much does a person have some spiritual powers or not. So they want to see, does this person have any spiritual power, any extraordinary? Is that
It is, I understand your question. That is a common tendency amongst people, that they associate the holiness and purity with certain external manifestation of powers. But again, that is just external. Many devotees do not have the clear understanding of these things. So, it is best to not worry about how much a person is spiritually elevated. What do I have to do with it? Yeah. So, the best thing, well, I don't know. That was the attitude of Vivekananda. That when he didn't know, he said, I don't know. Sri Ramakrishna says that this person is very spiritual, so I accept it. But just because of the external sign that the person is weeping because of the utterance of the name of God, for me it doesn't give any clear idea. So that is how it is. Okay, then any question there?
No question. I am trying to frame a question, but
Oh, no. Maybe next time you will be able to frame.
let me ask that. We are talking about the objective reality and observer
Yeah,
this afternoon.
yeah.
Sri Chaitanya Dev, when he went to the Vrindavan area,
Yeah,
he saw what happened
yeah,
during Sri Krishna's time.
yeah. Yeah, so he became observer.
Because it happened in distant past.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, but he became the observer. So that is how we know it happened. Without the observer, there is no observed. The two go together. That is a very subtle thing to, an epistemological issue actually. Is there a thing without it being observed? So that is where the difference came between the classical mechanics and quantum physics. Classical physics and quantum physics. That quantum physics said that there is no way that you can say something happened. It is only the observation that made it. So in fact actually they stopped using the word observer. They started using the word participator. In a phenomena, the observer is a participator in that. It is, there is nothing like objective observation. Like I am seeing Prithvish, but that is the Prithvish of my observation. There is the object and the subject, they are together participating to create a perception. So, without the observed, there is nothing like without the observation, there is nothing like the observed. So, there is no independent reality to that. And of course, the classical view is that the world is real. Whether we observe it or we don't observe it, it is there. So actually, even the Einstein and Niels Bohr came into conflict on this issue. Yeah, that Einstein thought that the world is there, although he was one of the originators of this idea of relativity, that the observer dependent world, but he could not really get away from this classical mind setup that there is nothing like an electron. As you see, as you observe, there is that electron. Otherwise, there is no such thing. So, It is by observation somebody has to certify its existence. So even if you may say after 10 years, 50 years, you will deduce that some such phenomena happened, but that also because there is an observer. Without an observer, you have no way of knowing anything. It is the observation that certifies it. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So let us conclude with the closing prayers. There is a special lecture on coming Sunday by Father Francis Clooney, a wonderful friend of Vedanta Society and a very erudite, famous scholar of multi-faith disciplines. So he is speaking on Mother Kali, Mother Mary, and the compassion of God. Let us conclude with the closing prayer. May the Divine, who is Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Great Spirit of the Native Americans, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the all-loving being manifest himself unto us and grant us abiding understanding and all-consuming divine love. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.